This is Random Cinema with Greg and Jace, and the year is 1989. 1989 was a landmark year in cinema where sequels and originality collided with style. Batman redefined the blockbuster forevermore. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade gave adventure real heart, and Lethal Weapon 2 proved action could still dominate the box office. Back to the Future Part 2 took us on a wild ride through time, back 10 years ago to 2015, while Ghostbusters 2 brought the gang back together to battle bad vibes and pink slime. From Dead Poets Society's call to seize the day to When Harry Met Sally's I'll Have What She's Having, 1989 wrapped up the decade with imagination, emotion, and a bit of pure movie magic. Good evening, Greg. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, Jace, and I really am so honored and humbled for everybody that checked out episode 0 and introducing the show, and we're ready to get into the real first episode, if you will.
That is correct. So, being that it is our official inaugural episode, Greg, can you introduce our inaugural guest?
I sure will, Jace. And, you know, like we said last week, and it's continuing on to, or last episode, as it's continuing on, Jace and I are 50-50 doing this podcast. We have not argued yet, but when the idea came up and we were all ready to go, I said, Jace, I only have one demand, and that is I choose the first guest, and there was no other first guest that I wanted to join us on Random Cinema than my other podcasting partner in crime. That's why this is a special evening for me, Kyle Bain. What is up, Kyle, of Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast and Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle?
Well, Jace and Greg, I'm honored to be the first guest on Random Cinema. And as always, I wouldn't be true to myself if I didn't say I was excited to be here. This is a fantastic opportunity. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, it was our pleasure. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, there you go. You can tell it's our first episode, but we're already interrupting each other. Fantastic. No, look, thank you very much for joining us. It's the good thing about being the first guest, you don't really know what to expect. So anything can happen tonight. Who knows? I don't think much will, except we're going to talk about the film that you've chosen. Mm-hmm. So, Kyle, can you let us know what the movie is that you've chosen for Random
of the year 1989 that you chose?
Yes. Peter Jackson's Meet the Feebles.
And this was especially interesting. And Kyle, it was complete coincidence. He is, we're doing The Frighteners, which is also directed by Peter Jackson, on the next Real Reactions, which you'll folks hear next week. Kyle, before we start, you know, you are passionate about film. Why don't you give us a quick rundown? You know, Bain's Film Reviews is out there. I was very impressed with Bain's Film Reviews when I first came across it, and that is not because you gave my films good reviews. Folks, that's before we got to know each other. So there was no biasness there. Kyle, tell us about your film history, how this all started for you.
I got into film maybe, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago when I was in college. I took a film class and I was late to film. So there was a lot of things that I hadn't seen. And COVID hit and it gave me an opportunity to be home and watch a ton of things that I wanted to see and write about it. I just had a lot of free time and I started Bain's Film Reviews, and I had an opportunity to write for some different outlets. And here I am with my own outlet and my own podcast with you, Greg, and being the guest of honor on the very first episode of Random Cinema. So I think that I'm doing something right if it's led me to here.
Oh, Jace has to hear this, though. Could you tell us real quick about how your Star Trek fandom came to be and you joined us on Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast as the resident film critic? I think Jace will love to hear this.
Well, also,
and the audience.
I was one of the poor souls that was chosen as the non-Trek watcher reviews, a Star Trek film. And I watched Star Trek The Undiscovered Country. And I fell in love with it. It was the first Star Trek property that I'd ever seen. I loved it. I loved how It was Greg, as I'm sure he will tell you at some point. He's very calculated in his decisions. He did a great job with that. I love how Shakespearean it is, and I love how deep and meaningful the dialogue is. And I then became a regular. I've now seen every Star Trek film, and I'm making my way through the Star Trek universe. I'm still on the original series, but there's a lot to catch up a lot to catch up on. But I'm excited to do so, and yeah, that's what has brought Greg and I even closer.
So the year was 1989. We gave you a choice of 4 years, 1989. You landed on Meet the Feebles, which I was very excited about. And Jace had said last episode that he loved that you avoided like big blockbusters or known movies,
Mhm.
that you went with a more obscure movie. But how did you land on it?
Um, Honestly, I was just scrolling through the list of every film that came out in 1989, which this does not make it onto some of those lists because it wasn't released in the US in 1989. So it misses some of those 1989 lists. And I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling. And I mean, we're talking 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I saw Peter Jackson's name. And obviously, my first thought when I hear Peter Jackson is Lord of the Rings. I adore those films. And I thought, this sounds so wildly different than anything else that I've seen him do before. I have to watch this. And that's how we ended up with Meet the Feebles.
And noting before we get into your review of the film and our review of the film, is yes, correct. Obviously, it's 1989, directed. It's the first time that Peter Jackson and his wife, Fran Walsh, actually write a project together. So it's the first time. And Fran Walsh, with Philippa Boyens, who joins them later with Lord of the Rings, would end up winning Academy Awards for their writing. But this was one of her first writing gigs with her husband. Is she wrote this movie. And the other significant thing about this movie that's worth noting is it's the first time Peter Jackson works with Weta Workshop. So we're also not only seeing the early work of Peter Jackson in this film, we're seeing very early Weta Workshop stuff to what they are there to what they end up producing in this day and age. It's quite a leap. But yeah, Kyle, I've got it. You've now seen it. This is the second film of Peter Jackson. What did you think?
Well, I don't think that even the synopsis that I read online that convinced me to watch this did it justice. Um, I mean, I know I was going to get into some really twisted version of the Muppets, but I didn't quite realize how twisted. I like that. I like how fucked up this movie is. There's not really another way to say it. It's a really effed up movie that deals with extortion and rape and drug use and there's like I don't know there's these little vignettes of different characters' stories where the one the elephant is trying to figure out or trying to deny the fact that he's the father, and the sheep comes in with you know looking, half an elephant with a trunk. And it's just such a twisted movie that shouldn't work, but works so well. And it works so well because of what it's representing. I mean, it is a commentary on Hollywood and stardom and things like that, but it's really a commentary on people, even beyond that. I mean, people are screwed up. People do some really messed up things, and we're seeing it more now with with the rise of social media and now all the biases within the news outlets. I mean, it does a really good job of representing real life, and it's just very honest. The visuals are insane, and it's interesting that they're able to bring to life um, like this horrible piece of humanity with this rat and a poodle where he is trying to take advantage of her and literally trying to rape her after he drugs her. And again, so incredibly wild, but it works on a number of levels. Then I don't like musicals. I know that this is technically a musical. I don't know if I label it a musical. There's like three real musical numbers. I had those songs stuck in my head for days. I planned on watching this film a second time, and I couldn't do it because I didn't want those songs again and again. They were driving me nuts. I think they're good, and I think that's why they were stuck in my head. Um, Again, things that shouldn't work, they work incredibly well. They do a really interesting job of using actual puppets versus people in costume, and they blend those things together very well. There's not really often a discrepancy between what's a puppet and what's a real person. I mean, you can tell the difference, but it's not like one is necessarily towering over the other, unless it's the hippo, in which case I guess that makes sense because she's meant to be massive. There's lots of commentary on that. But again, everything works so well. That's what I kept coming back to. This shouldn't work. This shouldn't work. It shouldn't make any sense. I shouldn't be enjoying this. And Peter Jackson figured out a way to make this work. And not necessarily seamlessly, but in a way that it didn't feel frumpy. It didn't feel fractured. It felt like even with all these interconnected stories, it manages to fit together in a way that feels organic and comments really, really well, again, on Hollywood and stardom, but on people in general.
That's excellent points there. And it's also a feat based upon this film cost them $750,000 to produce. $750,000, not a lot of money. But you could see every cent of that on the screen. There kind of is no doubt. Greg, all right. So you didn't choose this. This was thrust upon you to see this movie, just like myself. Give us the lowdown, your reaction to Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, a brand new way of my. I always chose the properties on Star Trek. I choose them on Real Reactions, but that's the point. No, I was very excited to go into this. I knew I was in for a ride. I don't think I loved it as much as Kyle, but let's start with what's excellent about it. So the first thing off the bat is you see Peter Jackson's just, there's a lot of TLC in it, and he loves film and he knows how to make a film. This was not so much. They did a great job with the puppets, but that was, I mean, I think it was supposed to look like Chuck E. Cheese puppets. And with the musical numbers, now it actually inspired the Happy Time Murders, which is a terrible movie. They tried to do this again with the Melissa McCarthy, and Brian Henson actually directed that film, The Happy Time Murders, where it was similar to this, that there was the Happy Time show and there was a murder, and there was very similar, where they did this right, but the show didn't make it because people didn't know what to make of it, was Greg the Bunny. This was a show that aired in 2002 for about 6 episodes, and it was inspired clearly, especially that the lead was a bunny who had problems. He had drinking problems. He had drug problems. It was very similar, and I appreciated that this film certainly inspired a lot of stuff that we saw. It was imaginative. The puppets were done. Once again, we have Peter Jackson making a film out of, for lack of a better word, nothing. It was very similar to Bad Taste. This was right after Bad Taste. And once again, you could tell how much love went into this, and love in the film. It's imaginative. It's original. At the time, it was original. At the time, it was very ahead of its time as well. I felt it was a little fragmented because after a while, you get the point. After a while, it doesn't really introduce anything new to what you've seen. And there's, as Kyle said, it's very much vignettes. So when the porcupine comes into it, you feel, this is going to be his story. But there's really no story here. Look, I have nothing wrong with nonlinear. Kyle reviewed Crime Wave with us, and this made me think of Crime Wave, as you had an early Sam Raimi there, and here you have an early Peter Jackson. But there's no doubt that it's compelling all the way through, that it keeps you interested all the way through, up until the amazing ending. It had one of my favorite lines in cinematic history now, Meet the Feebles. There is black forest cake in between your cleavage. That was a great line. The musical number of a fox singing about sodomy, and it was a very catchy tune as well, as Kyle said. Look, it was, I think, the first of its kind. Jim Henson had done some commercials, and obviously the Muppet Show was really meant for adults. But this just was like a warped Muppets on crack. I was trying to think about other films like this. You did have Garbage Pail Kids that preceded this here in the States. But I did enjoy it. I did appreciate it. There really isn't any characters that it stays on long enough. I think the hippo you get to know a bit, but it goes all over the place with characters. I thought that it was I may have enjoyed it a little bit more. Again, I don't know who I am to criticize something for being nonlinear when that's one of my number one sources of humor is nonlinear stuff. But it did lose me in that respect, but there was no doubt it kept me intrigued just by looking at what they're going to do next and the way Jackson did it. And I don't believe these were puppeteers first. I believe they were filmmakers first who got accustomed to puppetry. I could be mistaken, but that's what it seemed like to me. But it was still impressive what they did. But then, of course, it's worth it once you get to the end. I have nothing to add what the commentary was here. It was this is just as ridiculous as you can use the entertainment industry, especially back in that time where you had these variety shows and a lot of show business was connected. And they just did this downfall of the hippo. I'm so prepared. I forgot names, but they really it was this. It managed to also be a parable and a metaphor, which I love, for the evils of show business and what stardom can do to you, and obsession with your body and all this. So good movie, a solid film. I don't necessarily have to see it again, but impressive in many ways, and I'm glad I saw it.
Fantastic. I look at this movie as like a similar theme that goes through all of Peter Jackson's work, and that is he always takes big swings. So what he has here is a one-joke premise of a movie. And he sat down and going, how do I take this one joke of making R-rated Muppets and then make a story? So he's chosen to do this Robert Altman kind of esque interweaving tale of about 6 to 7 characters, which is so audacious to even attempt to do as a second-time filmmaker, but then to do it with Muppets. Narratively, it's not really supposed to make sense. I think the whole idea is the audience is supposed to go, what the fuck is this? And then move to the next scene and go, what the fuck is this? And it's shock value is very much the ingredient, the kind of button for a lot of these scenes. And for the most part, it's functional. My issue with it is I didn't love it just because I get the joke, but it was lost on me 10 minutes later. But I can appreciate certain moments in the film I love. For me in particular, I love the Nam flashback with the drug addict Muppet, where he talks about his time in Vietnam. And I'm looking at it going, you know what? There's a bit of production value in this scene. Like, they got a lot going on in here. There's a lot of... and if you are to appreciate this film, I think technically is where I appreciate it the most. Because, as I said before, it's $250,000, which is nothing to make a movie. And then what they've been able to do with those Muppets. Those Muppets aren't just a bit of felt on a sock. They have blood packs in them. Some explode. Some are, like I said, full motion bodysuit. Heidi, the hippopotamus, is a feat on its own. And it really plays out in that mass killing sequence at the end. Where she has to be hanging around, what is that, like an M50 or something? She's carrying around while she's mowing everybody kind of down. It's a film that they've attempted to make, like you said, with the Happy Land Murders, and they couldn't make it work. But if you were to remake this today, I think you could do something more interesting than like the Happy Land Murders.
Yeah.
Also, what I love about it technically is we get to see some of Peter Jackson's classic camera moves. Like, yeah, everyone's developing a style. All great filmmakers do, a tone, a style. And you can feel that in this, especially the connective tissue between this and Bad Taste and Brain Dead is so much there. And this is right smack in the middle of it. So it's great because you're seeing some of Peter Jackson's like style, which you can also tell what it's been influenced by, because it reminds me also of like Sam Raimi's work, his early work. You mentioned Crime Wave, and like Evil Dead and things like that. So he's and to think they made this in New Zealand. Now, this is close to my neck of the woods, New Zealand. Not known for a bigger film industry at all. So this film may have seemed small to the rest of the world, but I can tell you at the time, and me remembering this was huge for New Zealand. This was like, the biggest. This is like their Avengers at this point. New Zealand's not known for filmmaking. So the fact that Peter Jackson was able to do it in New Zealand with no real built-in film industry. Like I said, Weta had just started up. The times they used puppets before was a couple of the originators of the Weta Workshop. But that gets created from that. And you see the leap from Meet the Feebles to the Frighteners that you're talking about. Even that is massive, let alone before we get to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
well, it was amazing. It was amazing for me that this happened so coincidentally. There's a lot of kismet in our podcasting life. There really has been a lot of kismet, and The Frighteners is of course coming up on Real Reactions next week. Being able to see Jackson, evolve and where he went, they called The Frighteners his Bridge the Gap film that got into mainstream because he did Heavenly Creatures, which I also saw. I've seen a lot of Peter Jackson. I happened to have seen Bad Taste, and I did not see not Evil Dead, Brain Dead, but I was able to see. I mean, he was very much a trailblazer and a visionary as a filmmaker, and it was amazing.
It is. It's really great to see those kind of seeds being laid down here. I
was going to ask.
Yeah. Go on.
Oh, well, I was going to ask if I wonder whether or not Game of Thrones took their ending based on this.
It's got a bit of Red Wedding in it too, doesn't it? At the end of it.
Well, the Amelia Clarke character, what happens to her at the end of that? Yeah.
And I mean, like it's a, like I said, it's an audacious attempt at something that I think's working in his mind at a far deeper level than the audience ended up experiencing.
Yep.
And that would be my only kind of criticism of it. It just feels very much Peter Jackson and his mates having a beer at the pub and going, it'd be really cool if they made the Muppets do it. And then you'd shoot him in the head, the blood would come out. It just feels like one of those conversations. Yet he had the insanity and the funds to actually pull it off. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean, some of the great ideas come from guys just having a chat over a beer. Like I said, it was made very cheaply, but it only made $80,000 in New Zealand when it came out. So this is the flip side. It was a huge film, but it was a disaster in its home country. And it was when it came out on VHS, literally 6 months after theatrical release, this thing exploded. And then I was shocked to find when I started meeting guys from the Northern Hemisphere that people had heard of it. Like the fact that you guys even were aware that this thing existed was a bit of a shock to my system.
Well, Peter Jackson, once he was selected as the director of Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings ultimately became a phenomenon over here, I think people went, I saw Bad Taste in 2000, but once people were going back and rediscovering Peter Jackson's films, and that's some people saw The Frighteners that way.
I mean, I wouldn't have chosen this film had I not been familiar with Lord of the Rings. I mean, it was Peter Jackson's name. That's all I'd ever seen that he'd been a part of, and I love them. They're some of my favorite films. So again, scrolling through hundreds upon hundreds of films, the fact that the Lord of the Rings influenced me to watch Meet the Feebles is sort of incredible in itself. But it's exciting me now even more to look at the back catalog of what Jackson's been able to do.
Fantastic. Well, I think this is a perfect time to segue into our free-for-all, moment where we're just going to be talking about anything and everything around film. And we'll see how we go, all right? It
Well,
may be
should
5
we
minutes, it
rate-
may be 15 hours. Good luck, people.
Yeah, should we rate Meet the Feebles now? See
Give
what
it
our
a rating.
ratings are.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't even know what our rating structure is, to be honest with you. I mean, is it out of 5 stars? Is it out of 1 out of 10?
I would say 1 out of 10.
All right.
We learn as we go here on Random Cinema. I give this film a 7. And I was teetering between a 7, 7.5, and an 8, but I think it's a solid film, a 7. It was technically brilliant. I think if there was a little bit more of a story, I can't believe I am nitpicking because it didn't have a linear story. I can't believe Greg Vorob is doing that. If people see my stuff and people see the kind of stuff I love, I mean, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Crime Wave. I mean, so I don't get it, but for some reason, this might have worked better with one of the stories being Michael. So isn't that the porcupine? Michael, I'm so prepared.
No, George. George. I believe it's George.
Is it George?
Yeah.
Robert.
Oh, Robert.
Yeah.
Sorry, not George. Robert.
I think if we saw Robert kind of get caught up in this, this crime, and and then, or are they going to focus on the hippo? But yeah, 7. Still, it as a film, I really appreciated it. Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, you thought that I was going to be like so much higher on this than you. I agree. I think it's a 7. I think it's a really solid film. I enjoy a lot of things about this. I do agree that had Heidi or Robert or Wobert with his lisp, had they been the primary, draw, it had been their narrative throughout, I think that it would have worked better. I did really, really appreciate the aspects of this where, and I forget who it is. He goes to the doctor and he finds out that he has an STD and he's gonna die in, what do they tell him? He goes, you have 12 or 8, you have 12 hours.
Yes, the duck doctor was my favorite character.
Like I enjoy
named Dr. Quack.
Dr. Quack.
Yep. I enjoy these little things about it. It doesn't bother me at all that it's nonlinear. That's not a thing that bothers me at all. But I do.
I have no right to say it bothers me, but it.
How dare you? Shame on you. I do think that it would have worked better if it was a little bit more cohesive. But I guess if you're looking at this, the purpose of it, if it's pointing fingers at Hollywood, it sort of is. I mean, it is cohesive. It's just pointing fingers at different aspects of Hollywood at various times, and doesn't always line up. But I think it works. I enjoyed this film very much. It makes me want to watch other films of Peter Jackson's, like I said, and I think a 7 is a fair score for that. And I'm excited. I'm actually excited to show some other people this film because I think they're gonna get a kick out of this because they're super twisted. And I think
our mutual friend
enjoy
Patrick.
it.
You think Patrick?
I swear to God, that is the exact person that I was thinking of.
All right. Well, I'm the one who's
going to
have
be Patrick on the show.
We do.
Jace, your rating.
Yes, I'm going to be the harsh one. I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Because I appreciate its technicality, and I appreciate its being audacious. But the problem is it's trying to be too layered for its own good. So, I mean, I'm judging it as an experience as an audience member. Yes, I'm going to get a couple of laughs, but I'm also probably going to miss a lot of this film. And I think that we are critics, that we're more likely to examine a film and pick up on some of the subtleties and the attempts and the filmmaking style. But for a basic audience member, I do think this film fails on many levels. So, I'm going to be the rough one and say, nope, it's a 5 out of 10 for me. But I'm thankful it exists. It's important that it exists. That's where I'm kind of going to leave it, guys. I reckon that's our rating.
Yeah.
7, 7, and a 5.
And if I can jump in also, very indicative of these directors that went on to do amazing. James Gunn started out with schlock cinema, so.
Well, he worked with Troma, and that's a big deal. Like he worked with one of the two biggest B-grade studios you could work at. There's either that or Roger Corman back in the day, right? So
Yeah.
he got lucky. He did Romeo and Juliet, I believe, was his first.
I have
film.
to, and on this program, talk about my trauma audition sometime. But that's for another time. Folks, thank you so much. Kyle, give us those goodies on where we can find you.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me all over the internet at Bain's Film Reviews. That's bainsfilmreviews.com. You can find me at Bain's Film Reviews on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. You can find me at Bain's Film Review, no S, because of the character limitation, on Twitter/X. And you can, of course, find me on Real Reactions with the gentleman sitting across from me right now, Greg Vorop.
Excellent stuff. And back catalog of Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast. We said
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will
Yes.
say though, Kyle, before you go, I did scan some of your film reviews, and I didn't get a
Thank
chance
you.
to compliment you earlier. But I love the choice of what you're doing. You're talking about films that are not necessarily the upfront, what's
Mhm.
big at the cinema. You've got a lot of diversity happening there with your film reviews, so which I love, and I would recommend if you're into film reviews and you're sick of the stock standard what people thought of the Barbie movie kind of reviews, go check out Kyle's reviews.
Thank you so much. That means a ton. Thank you. Thank you.
And my sister is one of the authors on Bain's Film
Yeah.
Reviews, folks.
She
That's
is.
Michelle. Same last name. You can look her. I think Ken Radner wrote a review or two on
Ken
there.
Radner has written a couple reviews on there as well. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, that'll wrap it up for tonight's episode. Our inaugural episode for here from Random Cinema. And we have got a huge cast of guests coming up over the next coming months and so forth. Correct, Greg?
Yes. Coming up next is a mutual guest
Well, he's
choice of
my
ours.
first choice, actually.
Yes,
but
correct.
He's a mutual. I've known
But
this
he would have
man
fallen in mine as well.
at some point, and that is Captain Joe Dove, as a lot of people know him from the Captain's Quadrant podcast. Plus a slew of other podcasts. This guy gets around. Like, he's got Dish Dungeon as well, and To Be Seen. He appears with me and Jason over in the Jason Roy Gaston channel occasionally as well. But he's a great guy, close friend to both of us. Joe Dove will be on. And I won't announce the movie yet, but stay true to our social medias.
Oh, you don't want to know? Okay.
That. We'll drop that on our social media about a week prior to the episode being
Very
released.
well.
Get the audience a chance to go watch the movie and then come back to Random Cinema and enjoying the fun and watch along with us the movies we choose. So, well, we don't choose at all, do we, Greg? We don't
Not
have
at all.
say in this at all.
No, that is against the rules, as is turning down a movie. We cannot. Maybe if it's been done here before, but never can we turn down anything. Porn is not accepted, people. We want to make that clear. Porn is not accepted.
I fought against that, honestly, people, but, Greg won that argument. What can I say?
This is a close second. Meet the Feebles is very
Yes.
very
It
close.
is in moments, isn't it? Absolutely. All right, we'll lock that down, and thank you guys for listening to Random Cinema.
Find Random Cinema with Greg and Jace on the World Wide Web, on Facebook and Instagram by searching Random Cinema with Greg and Jace, on X at randomgreg_Jace, on Blue Sky at Random Cinema. And you can shoot us an email at randomcinemawithgregandjace@gmail.com. And please, if you would like to be given a year and choose a film, please let us know, and we would love to have you.
Fantastic. I couldn't have put it better myself, Greg. We're really excited about this show. We can't wait for you all to join us on this journey. And that has been Random Cinema, yes, with Greg and Jace. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. If you also want to find me out there on the interwebs, you can catch me at Talking Tubi over on YouTube. You can also find me over on the at Jason Roy Gaston YouTube channel, where we're having fun and shenanigans. And lastly, you can also find me occasionally working with the boys at the Captain's Quadrant, the amazing, unique Star Trek show for everybody to enjoy.
And you can find me, Greg Vorob, let me spell my last name for you, Vorob, on YouTube at Greg Vorob, where you can check out a lot of my film projects, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Greg Vorob. On Facebook, find me as a friend, Greg Vorob, or like my professional page. Also, Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle, podcast-wise, but remember that's R-E-E-L. Real Reactions with Greg and Kyle is currently exclusively on Spotify and iHeartRadio. And of course, Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast, in which you could check me out as the showrunner and main moderator for the first 3 seasons. There's also enough bonus shows to constitute its own season. And of course, check out Star Trek The Undiscovered podcast with Jeff Howell and Ken Radner. Don't forget to check out our extended family of podcasts, the aforementioned Captain's Quadrant, live every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on their YouTube channel at Captain's Quadrant. Happiness and Darkness, the superhero movie podcast. Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast. The Five-ish Fangirls. Twin Cities Trekkies. Bullshit Hour with John Seymour and its subsidiary, This Podcast is Lamb Chops, and The Hour of Comics is Upon Us with John Seymour, Jason Gurin, and Ken Radner. Find them wherever you get your podcasts.
Excellent, Greg. I will also add a couple more to that family. Please go and check out the Sci-Fi Queens. Nita runs that every fortnight, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a wonderful show. And if you want to see an Australian point of view on trailer reactions, go check out at Pop Culture Spread, as Rick Perrone and occasionally myself will go back and look at some trailers that are new and some of they are old.
Thank you once again for listening to Random Cinema with Greg and Jace, and we will see you on the next show.